Welcome to the True Wealth Investors Real Estate Podcast. Creative investing strategies to help you build true wealth. I'm your host, Chad Harris. All right, welcome everybody. Glad to have you back this week on the True Wealth Investors Real Estate Podcast. As always, I'm glad you're back. Help us out, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That helps others find us, and subscribe if you're on YouTube. Always appreciate you. So one of our core beliefs here with True Wealth is that we need to figure out a way to be successful today. Successful people find a way to be successful now, and waiting for something to change in the future isn't a successful strategy, right? We can't wait for interest rates to drop. We can't wait for deals to suddenly be easy to find. And similarly, we can't wait for something to change in our personal life, wait for us to have that money saved up for a down payment. We need to figure out a way to be successful now. And I think Jim Rohn said it, I'm going to butcher this quote, but it was essentially that success is based on the set of our sail, not the direction of the wind. So it doesn't matter what interest rates are doing. It doesn't matter if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market. It doesn't matter if we have a lot of cash in the bank or no cash in the bank. We are going to figure out a way to be successful. So with that in mind, I am glad you are dedicated to being successful. And I'm really excited for our guest today, Elizabeth Enright Phillips, a good friend of mine. We have known each other for years, and she is coming on to talk about one of her specialties is how to delegate and hire other people, include them in your business so that you can achieve your goals faster. And Elizabeth is a full-time real estate investor, as well as a homeschool mom of 6. And we share that. We homeschool as well. I don't know quite how you do it, just like I'm amazed at how my wife does all of the homeschooling. But Elizabeth thrives on delegation. She is in the central Ohio market, Lancaster, specifically just south of Columbus. And she also coaches other investors coast to coast on how to delegate their real estate business so that they can, one, be profitable, but also impact their community, which I love that mission focus, where they are not only building a business to benefit their family and provide a legacy for their family, but to impact their community. So welcome, Elizabeth. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And it is an honor to be on this podcast with you. I love your podcast. Your wife is amazing, by the way. Kara and I have always clicked, and she is phenomenal at homeschooling and doing the things that need to happen there. And so it is a privilege to be on here. I love that the podcast really focuses on action. And that is a huge deal towards success. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that taking action is really one of the major obstacles between the individuals who want to succeed in real estate and the individuals who always dream of succeeding in real estate, and those who just actually do it, right? So,
Absolutely.
and we were just talking before recording about how we both benefited from coaches, and that's really a big part of that coaching relationship is the encouragement to take action and the accountability to consistently take action and move forward. So, all right, so fill us in on kind of where your business is now. So some context for listeners who don't know you, and your husband, Kurt, where your business is now, how you started, and what that process has been like. That's a really big
Sure.
open-ended question, isn't it?
It is a big question. It's like, whew, okay, where to start? The teeny tiny version is that we got our start over 21 years ago in a historic duplex. I was training for a marathon. I was writing policies for real estate investors in my job as an insurance support staff for a major insurance company. So I was dealing with large portfolio deals, writing insurance policies. And after work, I would teach at a business college and then I would train for marathons. And my boss at work handed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I am looking at all these historic duplexes as I jog. And I found the perfect one that was sitting on the market for months and months, no back door. One side was vacant, one side was rented. Snow was going in the vacant side. There's a little stench coming out, come springtime. And this is the one for me. And so I
I'm
talked to
sure
Kurt,
everybody
our
who saw that
pastor.
said, I would love to live
Everybody
there.
loves
Yeah,
it, right?
perfect.
Oh, it's perfect. Yeah. So vicious dogs next door, inherited renter, completely untrained. And Kurt had talked to our pastor, his boss, and our pastor had bought a duplex when they were first married. So we're like, this is a great idea. Pastor did it, duplex vacant side. Of course, we should do this. So, we got our start, dealing with rotten onions, vicious dogs, the whole 9 yards. And we never thought that we could do it as a business because we couldn't get past the 20% down. So fast forward years and years, we had bought a couple more. Kurt was at UPS as a driver and he made enough money, but he had no time. I think a lot of people have that obstacle. And because he was gone all the time, and I would wake the kids up, in the middle of the night to show them daddy was still there. I'd have a picture of our wedding to show them pictures of daddy so they wouldn't forget what he looked like. I was a happily married single parent, if that makes any sense at
Yeah.
all to people that are working all the time. So the biggest thing was we didn't have any time. But the real problem was that we didn't have any money for the down payment. And the next problem was we were pretty distraught and discouraged about it. And it really came down to the root problem, 4 levels deep. It was a matter of faith. Like we hadn't asked, we hadn't sought, we hadn't knocked to see the doors open. So when I talk about my story, I really want people to hear hope that if they have no money or no time, the money's tight, they're upset about it, discouraged, they don't think they can do it, that it comes down to a faith issue and to ask and seek and find, and those doors will open. So first and last, our story is definitely about hope. We were the last people on earth that you would ever think could succeed in this business. Kurt is not the handyman special. Like he doesn't just like whip out tools and build a house in 3 minutes. He's not that kind of guy. And I'm definitely, a little busy being pregnant and nursing children and raising children for 18 years straight. Like we're not the poster children that would ever succeed in this business, right? So if people are out there and struggling with those obstacles, there is hope. That this story definitely, and the story of delegation, starts with humility and asking and believing that there is a possibility for change. So that's the short story, 21 years short.
Yeah. So do you think, well, we also share a background in ministry, right? So, Kurt being a pastor and your family being missionaries, and then my family being missionaries. And so one of the things with ministry, the key to success is calling and whether you believe you are meant to be there. Um, it is one of the keys to whether you stick it out through the tough times because it's tough, right? It's not an easy task. What do you think is one of those keys for success as an entrepreneur? Do you think it's similar, that commitment, or
Yeah, I do think that there has to be a commitment, and I had to come to the point where there was a decision to make. Was I going to stay comfortable in being just a homeschool mom and just accept that, I have this professional background, I've worked with business startups, I love real estate. We have, a couple duplexes by that point. We had 3 duplexes because we couldn't sell the one that we had originally, so we bought two more. We still couldn't see it as a business, as a viable business. And I had to come to the point where I wasn't comfortable with just living out this life. And Kurt said, I don't want to retire from UPS. And so the day he told me that, I slashed expenses. I was full in real estate. I'm like, okay, this is what we need to do. And we had a mentor who said to us, it'd sure be nice if your three little duplexes, barely anything, could replace Kurt's income. And that was July of 2017 that he told us that.
Hmm.
And from there, it was full out. We bought several portfolios and utilized private money, and we did 17 turns or acquisitions in 15 months when I had a newborn at the time. So it was all
Yeah.
hands on deck.
Yeah. Full steam
That
ahead. And
that
so,
commitment, yes,
right.
absolutely. Cannot be comfortable.
Commitment and sacrifice and a willingness to do whatever it takes to get there, as well as it's interesting in your story. One of the keys was somebody else who was further along, a mentor, giving perspective, essentially, right? You're in the trenches every day, which all of us investors have experienced and can't see above the brush and thorns and everything that we're dealing with. And it took a mentor saying, here's kind of the right perspective long term, shoot for this, and it'll all work out.
Yes, and I would say definitely take one nugget from, even our podcast today and just if it resonates with you, run with that. One of the phrases that really for delegation helped me is your destiny is through the door of delegation. You have to seek and knock. The door will be open, but your destiny is through the door of delegation. You can't get to your destiny if you're not willing to delegate. And for me,
Mm.
that was very convicting and very humbling. I'm a very action oriented person by nature, and I was a do it myself. I think that was my first sentence when I was a toddler. I'll do it myself. And sometimes entrepreneurs can be very competent and very motivated, and it takes too long in delegation it's just easier to do it myself, right? As parents, we're like, here, let me just tie your shoe. No, we have to slow down. Our destiny is through that door of delegation. And it can be any personality style. Any personality style can learn to delegate because it's a skill. It's not something we're born with, being able to delegate. It's something that, if there's a hard charging personality, type A, they can learn to pull back and not bulldoze everyone. If somebody's a little more on the laid back side, they can learn to motivate themselves and motivate those around them and rally people to a cause. If somebody is flamboyant and the life of the party, they can still be focused and work a room to network with intention. And somebody who maybe is very detail oriented can lift their gaze to look at the big picture and make sure that those details are heading them in the right direction. So any personality style, I feel like, can learn the delegation skill for that success that they're looking for.
That's sharp. I love that. I love that the delegation is what leads to your destiny, right? It will get you there faster, and it really is one of those linchpin keys. So, one thing, how do you recommend people? Because I know one thing a lot of people struggle with, which myself included, was I was that, like you described, independent person, right? I can do it on my own. Why should I need to pay somebody else or employ somebody else to do it? And for many of those things, I could do it better. At least I thought so. That turned out in hindsight not to be true, but I believed I could do it best. And I actually believed it was somehow wrong of me to hand it off if I could do it. Right. I think I don't know how to describe that mentality, but it's somehow not right of me if I can do it to pay somebody else to do it. How do you get people over that hurdle?
That is a huge obstacle, and it was for me too, because grew up very, I don't know how else to say it, poor. I mean, we didn't have food in the fridge. We had no furniture. A couple times, like bounced around from rental to rental, single mom. A lot of people have that story. It's not unique, to our era now. And so to hire somebody else was a huge mental shift for me. I had to really grow into that. I had to get to the point where I was so desperate to build our business and be profitable quickly, because we didn't have the luxury of a high paying job. Kurt left his job and I was a stay at home mom. So, like, we had no paycheck for 2 years, living out of savings and building our business. We had to outrun. We knew we had a limited amount of time, limited amount of funds, and we had to somehow outrun our savings and make sure that we could produce enough income in that short period of time. So I had to get over my misgivings about hiring somebody to do tasks really quickly. And I know a lot of people are under a time crunch, whether it is money related or medical related or whatever the motivation is, that there's a time crunch. This has to happen quickly. We have to get over it's a root of pride. I feel like it can be disguised in, abandonment issues from childhood, but it is really pride. We have to humble ourselves enough to hire somebody to help us. And being able to say, I need help with this, is the humility issue. And for me, I had to really dig in deep to humble myself enough to say, I need help with this. I'm not delegating it because I'm somehow prideful in the sense of I'm too good to do this. It was prideful in the sense of personal competence. Like, I can do this, I can do it all, right? And
Yeah.
that's not healthy. So I had to find a way to say, when I delegate and I hire somebody to do this, it is not because, like, I'm too good to do it. And I do say that to my team members that I hire. And I'm not delegating it because I hate it. And I tell them the truth, even if it's cleaning, even if it's scrubbing, unsightly things. I tell them, and in truth, I don't hate it. Some people may, and that's fine. But I tell them I'm delegating this because I need to do other things that only I can do. And I love doing this and I want to share it with you. So I love my business. I love what we do. I feel called to what we do. I believe passionately in it. And I had to take time to think about it, to get a vision, to have a purpose, and to build our brand so that when I hire people, I bring them into that joy and into that mission, and to say, I want to share this with you so that you can be part of it, even if it's spackling and painting or scrubbing out a refrigerator. I'm always forever talking about, this is our mission. This is what we do. When people walk into our homes, they literally catch their breath and they say, this feels like it was made for me. There's always something unique, something that is a design or a feature or something we've thought of, our team has thought of. And providing homes for people is something that our team can rally around. And restoring neighborhoods, we specialize in historic homes. A lot of times they're drug houses. We're taking back our hometown. So when someone comes to delegation, it's important to think through, what is your vision of success for you, for your family personally, but also for your business? And what is your purpose? Because there's a lot of ways to make money. And I even said this to my intern yesterday. I told her, we have summer interns, and I'll get into that. But I said, there's a lot of ways to make money in the world, and there's probably some easier ones than what we do, and that's fine. But we're called to do this. If I weren't called to do this, I definitely would go find an easier way to make money. I'd go gamble in Vegas or something. I don't know. But this is what we're called to do. And I'm constantly casting that vision and sharing that joy with them. My attitude is contagious across our organization. And I had to work on my attitude first to have that joy before I could pass that off to any team members that I'm hiring.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I know when I started hiring, it was a struggle because I thought I was giving them the tasks I didn't want to do. And it was like, I'm asking them to do the worst stuff. But in reality, I was hiring them to do what they were gifted to do, right? For, let's say, my top assistant, she's doing what she's really gifted at doing, what she thrives at, which is totally opposite of me and what I'm gifted at. And so she's thrilled to do her work, and it's a blessing to her when I include her in the business. And she's thrilled that I don't ask her to do my tasks, right? She doesn't want to call a potential lender and pitch a loan and, do all of those things. So it really is, who was it? Jim Collins, who said, getting the right people on the bus and in the right seat.
And
So,
that is huge. We have to really, when you delegate, this was one thing I wanted to remember was when you delegate, it's huge to know the people and their personalities a little bit. You can tell pretty quickly when you study personalities, but along the way, I always keep asking, there's time and emotion in each task. So are they spending the right amount of time on that task and do they have the right emotion? So on our checklist, I have their time, their task, and their emotion. And I'm always asking for feedback. Not that they have to love every job. So they have three choices. I love this. This is awesome. I'm neutral. It's okay. I don't care. It's fine either way. Or this is torture. I hate it. Please don't ever ask me to do this again. And
yeah.
those are their drop downs in the Google Sheet of what they can choose, right? Now, nobody is ever going to, actually, that's not true. I have had a VA a couple of times tell me, this is torture. I hate it. Please don't ever ask me to do this again. And I give them permission to be honest with me from the gate. Just tell me, even our contractors, when we hire a new contractor, tell me what do you like to do? I don't want to know what they can do. I want to know what's your favorite thing to do. And I'm going to try and pull jobs to that contractor for things that he just really enjoys. It's
Yeah.
important to me that they enjoy their work because when they enjoy it, they tend to put more effort into it. They tend to study it and read up on it and YouTube it. And this is what they love to do. And then they stand back and they take a look at it, whether it's, admin stuff or on-site stuff, and they are so proud of it because they loved doing it. So you can't discount emotion and personality when you're delegating. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I think really, especially long term, that would be a key to success, right? Anybody can force themselves to do a task in the short term, but they're not going to be successful long term if they really don't enjoy what they're doing. So, um, I liked what you said too about how in the beginning when you were hiring, you were living off of savings, right? And so my story was similar. I didn't have savings. Um, but when I started, um I was reading Inc. magazine and all these companies growing, and basically they had this figure of their burn rate, right, where they would raise money and they understood they would be a negative cash flow for a certain point, but once they hit a certain point, there'd be positive cash flow and it'd all work out. So that was my model, which was stressful, but in both situations, it's interesting because it almost seems counterintuitive to hire people because in both of those scenarios, you have this image of we have so much money to conserve. And if we hire someone, we're actually depleting the money that we have available, right? How do you wrap your head around that?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of people get stuck right there. That's their linchpin that they cannot get past, and looking at it as an investment, there's a couple ways. I'm pretty scrappy. Like I still scrape the bottom of the peanut butter jar. I'm like, there's a quarter in there, kids, scrape it out. Right. And so I had to start hiring in a very strategic way, just like you. So the ways that I did it, and I still do this, is I make sure I do not go to the big guru delegation. There's delegation programs and systems out there that say, okay, we'll give you a VA and you plop down 8 grand and they say, your VA is going to do X, Y, and Z, and they're fully trained, ready to go. And that just was not an option. And I didn't feel like that was a good investment. So when I say investment, I'm talking $25 to hire somebody one time to do one task, to do one thing. $25 I could do. And I figured it was worth it to me for $25 to see if this person, and I screened them. I did Facebook background checks, like it'll tell you anything you want about somebody in the first 3 scrolls, if there's somebody that you want as a part of your organization, right?
Yeah.
And don't try and hide, because I'll look for misspelled last names. I'll find your mother. Like, this is what we do. So, we make sure and screen before we even pay anybody a dollar. But referrals are great. We had referrals, like one VA. I hired my best friend because I knew she had some financial goals that she was working towards. And I paid her even before we were making any money to be able to just take some simple admin stuff. Well, then she brought on another VA that she knew, another homeschool mom that needed some income that she could do from home. So I really like that model of referrals. Now, there's risks on both sides working with best friends. We've been best friends for 40 years since, yeah, so it's a long time. So we've had our fair share of disagreements, but we work really well together, and she brought other people to me. We also have brought on interns, so we can pay them a little bit lower amount. We pay them in the summertime. We've also brought on interns that was an exchange. So we would pay maybe our summer interns $12 an hour, and then I do a fall cohort for a specific project or task, and they would not be paid, but in exchange, I would teach them, this, and this skill that they were looking for. So maybe I had 4 interns that were working for free, but they were getting education in this realm. And I've written up syllabuses to give for like a college credit. So you can do free or low cost delegation, especially on the admin side. I also did it on the on-site work side. So we had interns, a couple of young men who had just graduated. They wanted to learn on-site stuff. So they'd shadow Kurt, and then I helped them start their LLCs. And 5 years later, I still have one of our interns. He's our lawn care guy. He wanted to learn how to set up his lawn care business. So he worked with us. He still does, however many lawns every week with us. And he gives us a great rate, lower rate than we
Yeah.
could do with anybody else, because we helped him start, his business. So it's about bringing value to them and knowing what the people want and being able to see if it's a good fit for what we can provide, not just monetarily. Maybe it's a schedule that's the most important thing to them. Like the homeschool moms need flexible schedule. Maybe it's that they want to start an LLC. One of our contractors right now, he wants to buy his own portfolio. So we're looking for what he wants. And if there's something we're going to pass on, we'll match it up with that. So knowing the people's goals and really hearing their heart of what they want, and then coming alongside of that helps them be better equipped to come alongside your goals. So it's a win-win.
That's sharp. So with an intern,
Mhm.
what's the distinction between an intern and an employee contractor relationship? Is it that they get other benefits, whether that's knowledge or experience? Is that the distinguishing factor?
Yes, so our virtual assistants, would it make sense if I tell you who I have right now, like an org chart, an organizational chart of who we have? So there's a distinction. We have VAs that work all the time with resident care and unit care. So our resident care is basically property management for the renters. We split property management into 2 parts: unit care and resident care. And we call tenants residents, obviously, because that's a little more updated term than the feudal terms of landlord tenant. We just don't like that vibe. We're housing providers, they are renters or residents. So our VAs take care of our residents and help dispatch contractors for units. So our interns are more special projects. They have to read books. They are usually college students or high school students. We have, at any given point, we have 3 to 5 interns, depending on different projects. Typically, our summer interns are 6 weeks, and we give them 6 weeks, and then the opportunity, we reevaluate at 6 weeks to see if they're going away to college, if they're staying here, they may stay with us longer, but interns are typically here on site, and our admin VAs are at a distance. My VAs, 3 of them are in the US, 1 is in the UK, and 1 is in the Philippines right now. I think that's everybody.
Sure. So to get into kind of the how does somebody actually do it? Um, and also like, as a real estate investor, you have 25 hats, right? It's an endless list of the tasks you need to do and the skills you need to learn. And how do you decide who to try to hire first, or what's, I guess, tasks to hire for? And then how do you start that process of actually finding a person and training them and, everything that's involved?
So how do you start the task, how to see what to delegate? I recommend, so I have 5 steps to my delegation system. And my husband, Kurt, is a track coach. So it is all about the analogy of track and baton handoffs. So
Mm,
that you can know where to start, right? Because it can be a jumbled mess. Your to-do list could look like a tangled mess, a web. And so it has to start untangling all that mess to see where to start. So the first thing in my
in
delegation,
reality,
yeah,
a lot of entrepreneurs, that is what it is, right? It's a tangled mess. It's not that they're doing anything wrong. That's just kind of
no,
the mind of an entrepreneur and the nature of it.
yeah.
So,
So it really, in order to go fast, you have to slow down. And the first step is you have to have time to think and eliminate anything that distracts you from being able to think. Now, honestly, I have 6 children, and interruptions and distractions are a part of daily life. So I get it. It's really hard, but we can eliminate the distractions of the digital world, especially. So eliminating distractions, having time to think, and doing a time audit. Now, it doesn't have to be forever, but there are some benefits to doing a time audit on yourself, is to take your task list and just see, okay, am I doing right this second? Racehorse focus. And to really self-discipline to the point where you're like, okay, I'm going to do this next and this next. And I use the same time audit that I require of my VAs, because I want them to create their own lists after they've been trained and up and rolling, and say, okay, I started this time, I ended this time, this is what I did, and this is how I feel about it. I love it, I'm neutral, I hate it. And I do the same thing for myself so that I can see what can I delegate. And it may be that I love it and I still need to delegate it, even though I love it. Those are the hard ones for me. Kurt is always pushing me. He's like, why don't you delegate that? And I'm like, but I love it. I love it. So sometimes you have to let other people enjoy it and love it too. But that's how I went through, and I just, for at least a week, audited myself. And it was really eye-opening to see, where was I wasting time? Where could I delegate better? When I didn't even know what to delegate, then at the end of the week, I had a list of repeatable items.
okay, sure. Yeah. And I think in reality, a lot of us don't know where our time goes. In that week, there are so many hours we could not recall looking back on exactly what we were doing. So I think there is power in that, and knowing exactly what we're doing and what things are taking the most time and which tasks we don't enjoy. That's a great starting point.
So that's our first step. The second step of is thinking through, tracking the time. And one other thing I wanted to remember was that when I delegate in this tracking season, point of the process, I made sure that I delegated items that were teachable, relatively quick items that I could pass the baton to, and I kept income producing items. So I kept the things that made sure income was happening. I very rarely delegate income producing activities to a VA right out of the gate. So if somebody's new to delegation, do not give an income producing activity to a VA unless that is their realm of authority. They're an expert in that field. For example, I didn't delegate negotiating and talking to sellers to a VA. None of my VAs are experts in that. And I wasn't willing to pay for an expert in that field because our brand is such that we're local, we're personable, like it's very much a personal brand. And so for us, it didn't make sense to pay a high ticket person to delegate that income producing activity when we could pay a lower rate for other admin things that didn't need that high level of expertise. Does that make sense?
Perfect. Yeah, completely. And if you hired somebody to do that who wasn't local, it would actually be contrary to your brand. Which if you're that's one of the keys, I think, is having a vision for what you're building, and so much of your brand and mission is tied to that. So I think that's a great point.
And I think there's a lot in delegation. If you just, Google delegation for real estate investing, you're going to get, boom, 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 all
Oh
sorts
yeah.
of things.
Yeah.
Uh, because I did that, right? And I was looking for homeschool mom delegation for real estate investing. That doesn't exist. Okay. So just so that you know. But there's lots of gurus who will take lots of your money and not help you at all in the area.
Unfortunately, yeah,
Uh,
that is true.
there, there just is. And what you're looking for, and that's unfortunate because the coaching realm has been so pivotal for me. I know it has been for you, and we have teachers' hearts, and the false gurus really make it hard for people to find the help that they really need. So being discerning when you're looking for delegation help is really important at the gate to have that discernment of what is most important to delegate and prioritizing and setting yourself up for, making small steps in delegation that are not going to sink your business and being able to even make mistakes. And we've hired and fired quickly, when we realize that that person wasn't in alignment. Stealing is always wrong. We're going to fire quickly for that. And we do it still in a respectful way. We don't burn bridges. We're not aggressively attacking their character, but we do say this behavior is not in alignment with our company standards. So that is something that we have very high standards, but we also make room for mistakes. And we set that up in the beginning with whenever we hire somebody for a job or a project, or even for ongoing projects, we have to view mistakes that they'll happen, that it's still not going to be fatal. We will still pay them, even if they make mistakes. And sometimes that's a little controversial in the real estate realm. You'll hear, both sides chirping about these issues of contractor mistakes or VA mistakes. Do they still get paid? Do you dock their pay? Our company standard is we will still pay you if it is an honest mistake, and we're going to work through the solution with that person. And we don't expect perfection. We do ask for excellence and honesty. And we offer that in return. We pay quickly. So we pay faster than anyone in the industry. If someone completes work for us on Saturday, they are paid immediately on Monday, less than 48 hours. So we pay very quickly. We pay direct deposit through Zelle, and we tell them up front, their pay, we understand, is food for their kids, diapers for their babies. Like, we are not playing around with their money. We make sure they get paid and they get paid quickly. And we make that known up front. And we talk to them about, having good communication. And if there is a mistake, just tell us quickly. And that's part of having that humility and saying, we've made mistakes. Any of the computer stuff, I've deleted my own website 3 times on accident. Nobody can do the worst mistakes. I've already done them. So that takes some of the pressure off their shoulders. Like, we don't expect perfection. We just want excellence, and we're on the same side of the table.
Yeah, if we start expecting perfection, we're setting them up to fail. Nobody will live up to that. So, um, how do you handle pay for um, the people that you're hiring, especially VAs, and it's not a hands-on contractor at the site? Do you do it task oriented, hourly, salary? How do you handle it?
So that's a great question. So, and we have different ways depending on what it is, and we follow the tax code for 1099 employees. So my overseas people, we have it project based. So Philippines and the UK, it is project based. My UK gal is through Fiverr, is how I met her.
Okay.
A Filipino VA, she found me. So she hit me up and said, hey, I can do this, this, and this. My sister-in-law is from the Philippines, so I have some connection to the country already. And so this gal is from an area in the Philippines that we knew. And so we pay her through PayPal by the project. My US based ones, it is both project and hourly, depending on what it is. If it's a project that I don't know how long it's going to take them, then sometimes I'll do hourly for that. And then they also have some projects that are bigger projects, and I'll just say, okay, here's the flat rate. Let's just make sure and track your hours, because I always want to make sure that they don't go below. Like, if they hit a snag, they need to tell me. I want to make sure and take good care of my people. So I pay them through Zelle, is great. And we have invoices each week. It details what projects they've been working on, what tasks they've done. And so everything is documented. Everybody's on the same page. They understand and sign an independent contractor agreement. They set their own times of when they work. I don't tell them when they work. I do tell them if I have like a time sensitive task, which is pretty rare, but like if we have a lease signing or somebody's moving in on a certain date, I will let them know that. But otherwise, everything is at their time frame and their leisure, because they are independent contractors. They are not employees. So they can tell me yes or no if they want to do a project, and they tell me when they're going to do the project, and they tell me when it's done. How they did it is entirely up to them.
Sure. And how do you, I mean, what's the management like? How do you know if they're doing a good job? How do you, what's the line? If you fire fast, obviously, if they steal, that's fairly easy. But are there KPIs, or how do you know if they're the right person and doing a good job, or if they need to find somewhere else where they'll succeed better and you can replace them? I'm giving you the
That
easy
is,
questions now, right?
yeah, that's a huge question. That's an ongoing question, actually, truth
Yeah.
be told. So there are a couple ways. I I always give people the guide to working with Elizabeth, and they always laugh, and I say, this is how I work best. So, because everybody should come with a training manual, Kurt he delegates completely differently than I do, which would be a great conversation to have sometime, because he is so remarkably different than how I delegate, like polar opposites. And I tend to hire people that like to work with my style of delegation. So
Yeah.
I tend to delegate, and I tell them I'm very patient, but I'm relentless. So I trust, but I verify always. And so I have systems in place, either tech or people, so that there's always this, we call it the circle of communication and completion. So we have circle of communication, who needs to be involved, who needs to be in the loop, we over communicate as a team with our renters, our contractors, the VAs, and me, so that everybody knows what's happening. The worst feeling in the world is to delegate something and then for it to all fall apart, right?
Yeah.
This person didn't get the key code. This renter was mad because somebody walked into their unit that they didn't know was coming, which that's honestly never happened to us, but it happens all the time, in the real estate world. So we call it the circle of communication and completeness. So everybody knows that they need to over communicate with everyone involved. And if there's any change, they need to communicate. So I'm not the only one checking. Our renters actually know they are part of our team. They are very much team players, and they know that when we train them with our tenant training program. We call it our resident care or resident training program, that they need to give us feedback. That is their responsibility when a repair request occurs.
Hmm.
So our VAs also know that they need to check with the renter and check with the contractor and keep me in the loop with the repair requests, so that's just an example of a circle or a cycle that we go through a lot, to check and make sure that the VAs are doing what they said. The technology we use is Google Voice, and I keep all tech under my control. So I can see on Google Voice if they said they logged in, did they actually log in to Google Voice to respond to contractors or renters for a repair request? It timestamps it. Did they timestamp it in their task list of when they logged in? Did they put in the number? And I can go back in the version history and see if they actually put in the number when they said that they did. So there's tech in place to say, okay, if you didn't, now I'm not going to fire somebody over that, but I am going to be aware, okay, what's happening here? Same thing with our contractors. They need to text us when they're on site. And so then if they're not on site at 10 o'clock, the tenant says, no, they didn't come till 3. Then we're like, well, okay, what happened here? You said you were on site at 10, but the resident didn't see you until 3. Maybe they were in another unit in the building. Maybe something happened. They had to run to go get supplies. We're not going to fire them. And I think a lot of people jump the gun and believe the worst about their team. The majority of times people are not dishonest. The majority of times they're just careless or ill-trained. So I'll say something to them in terms of a training moment rather than in terms of firing. It is rare that I have somebody who deliberately bucks me on that system. And if they deliberately buck me, then they're gone.
Yeah, I think a lot of contractors and assistants don't see the value in that reporting or transparency of what they're doing. If it's pictures of the work they're doing on the on site or whatever that is that we're requiring, they don't see the value in it, and so they don't want to do it. But I always tell them it's for their benefit. It's so that everybody knows what work exactly they completed, right? Or if it's a project, let's say with an administrative assistant, I can't see exactly what the progress is until it's finished, but I would like to know that there is something going on, right? And so that's beneficial for them to record what they're doing when and what progress they're making.
And that is something, especially on Fiverr, we can do, and I do it on Google Sheets, is to do milestones. So I give it to them in incremental pieces. And that's how I'm very different than Kurt. Kurt likes to give them the whole project and just say, tell me when it's done. And I like to give them milestones and say, tell me when you reach mile marker 1, 2, and 3. And you can actually set that up in Fiverr with their software. And for my VAs that aren't on Fiverr, I set it up in Google Sheets so that we do have milestones and they can feel like they can ask me questions. I'm very much a question person. So I tell them, take 5 minutes, try and figure it out. If you can't figure it out, don't stress about it. Just ask me. So I want them to feel like they get feedback, especially with millennials and young people or people that are not real estate specific people. In the beginning, I expect a million questions and it doesn't bother me at all. But towards the end, then, as they are ready to launch, I give them a raise. I tell them, okay, you're ready to launch now and you can do this. I trust you. I make sure and be their biggest cheerleader and encourager. and then they feel confident enough to make some bigger decisions on projects. So it's an art and a science, a lot of science at the beginning and art as they grow.
Yeah, sharp. Because eventually they need to be able to take ownership for it to actually be delegating, right?
Correct.
If we have to specifically tell them what to do and how to do it, then they're not truly taking over
No.
that task. Yeah.
No, and every person is going to, I see people fail in delegation all the time when they expect people to, from the gate, do things that they are not ready or prepared or feel confident doing. But if the delegator would just give them a little longer runway, they're going to soar. They're going to do what they need to do. And they have to understand that when they're passing that baton of delegation back and forth, sometimes that VA is going to pass it back to us and say, okay, I'm stuck. I can't do any further because I haven't given them, access to whatever it is that they need. And not to be annoyed by that, but to teach them we're going to pass the baton back and forth like in a relay race. And sometimes we're going to drop the baton. Sometimes it's going to be me that drops the baton. I'm still learning to delegate even now. I'm still growing in delegation, right? It's not a destination. It's a lifelong lifestyle of processing and learning how to delegate. So hopefully that gives people hope that they don't have to have it perfect. And sometimes the baton gets dropped and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know something else I struggled with was not giving them a picture of what the result was supposed to be. And so sometimes they had a much different expectation for how this was going to work out. Um, and in actuality, a lot of times my expectation was a lower bar than what they were trying to hit, right? And so they're beating themselves up to hit this bar that I never even expected them to hit. So it is a constant process and a constant learning process to get better. That's sure. So, any other thoughts on um, the process of how to hire and delegate? Any thoughts to wrap it
I
up?
think, yeah, I think just running your own race in delegation and running at the pace that works for your lifestyle, your team, your family. There's a lot of pressure now in our digital world to maybe delegate or run our businesses at a capacity that we're not ready for. And it's okay to take imperfect action and go at a pace that works in this season. Doesn't mean you're going to stay at that pace. Sometimes you do have to slow down to go faster and to understand that there are different paces. And the comparison trap and guru, false gurus are going to try and entice people into the next shiny object. When I see a lot of people working through delegation, they just run that baton, practice it over and over again. That baton pass is what's going to really get them the speed that they want. It may just not be the first time you ever try it. You may have to practice it over and over and over again, and not to have shiny object syndrome and change the system and hire a new guru, and all of those things can just distract from just a simple baton pass. Just practice it every day. And that's really what is going to get the speed that we need and the pace that's going to really create the success we want.
I love that. Feel too often I see investors try it out and they're not very good at it because they've never delegated before and they don't give very good instructions and they don't really describe the result that they want. And then surprisingly, it doesn't go well. And then they complain, well, that doesn't work at all. I'm going to have to do it myself, right? And give up on the whole process. So, um, yeah, I love your advice. Just keep with it, keep practicing. And in the end, you're going to have to delegate to get where you want to be. I truly believe. So we're both in rentals. I think that isn't necessarily the easiest way to make money, but it's probably the easiest way to get wealthy, right? And I didn't understand that when I got into it, but it's been amazing over the years, seeing how that works out. And when we get into rental properties, everybody talks about, I want passive income,
Oh,
right?
that makes me laugh every
Yeah.
time.
Well, without delegation, that is never going to happen. That is a fool's
Not gonna happen.
errand, right? So,
Yeah.
um, we have to be able to delegate and include other people to ever have any glimpse of passive income and what we always strive for. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on today. I love the discussion. I've got notes here, and um, I love your insights on how you've hired different people in that process and accountability. So much good information. So thank you, Elizabeth, for coming on and sharing. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a ball. I absolutely loved it.
So for people who want to find out more about you and your business and what you have going on, how can they find you?
Well, they are welcome to Facebook stalk me, Instagram stalk me. That's totally fine. I'm good with that. I'm an admin for one of the largest women's real estate investing group on there, and also our local group, Profit with Real Estate. But of course, our coaching website is runningcreekco.com, and we are going to be starting another semester in July. We only take a very small number of students at any given time because we are still active in the game. We actually have 4 houses in contract to purchase and 1 contract to sell and another one going on the market this weekend. So we definitely
Right.
are still in the game. We still actually do what we teach, which is kind of fun. And I'm a little sassy about it because I really appreciate the perspective that we get from being in the game, being able to give that to a small number of students because we do want to impact our communities. And I think it starts small, and in delegation, being able to do that with our students, it's real time. So
Sure. Well, we'll definitely include your contact info and links in the show notes. And I'd encourage anybody to reach out to Elizabeth. Her and Kurt are great people I've known for years. I trust them patently. And I know that you'll be glad you did reach out. They're genuine, transparent people. So, again, thanks for coming on. For anybody listening, you can always find more information and show notes at truewealthinvestors.com. And we'll see you again next week. Until then, keep building your dream life one door at a time. We are adding new episodes every week, so make sure and subscribe and check out all of our content at truewealthinvestors.com.